points of the school that showed some other movement that became more apparent that there was some issues, at which point we had them do a full assessment of the building, and that included not just structural, but building systems as well. But the main crux of their report was the condition of the exterior surface of the building. And just to give you again a brief description of how the building is constructed, the exterior of the building has, in the masonry portions, there's the exterior surface of the building is a 4-inch concrete masonry unit, 4-inch CMU is what you'll see in the report. Inside of that is a 1 to 2-inch cavity, air cavity. And on the inside of that, which also creates the inside face of the classrooms and offices, is a 6 or 8-inch concrete masonry block. The two blocks are separated by an air gap, which was typical construction of that era. You'll still see it in some areas where that gap is used not only for insulation, but it allows for water to drain and come out of the building through weep holes. The two courses of block, the two walls, are connected with what's called a masonry anchor or a wall anchor, which is at the time, a galvanized strap between the two blocks. And they're spaced about every 30 inches on center. I don't have the exact number, but over time, those straps have become compromised. And we found that through DDC, did some exploratory work where they opened the wall up and actually have photos of the straps being just disintegrated. What those straps provided was support, horizontal support of the outside wall. And without it, the wall has the ability to move. And when you get some movement, you get cracking in the mortar, that becomes an issue.
Okay, so to my understanding, the report was completed in December 2021. Is that correct? At least their inspections and when they did it.
The report says it's dated, that the inspection was dated the 28th of December. The report to us has a cover letter on it from DTC, which is dated the 28th of January.
Okay, so between that time period, did you have conversations with the consultant, between December 28th and when the report was finally issued, as to their concerns or their preliminary findings?
I'm sure I did.
Okay. At any point in time, I'm just trying to understand how we got to the closure of the school, if everything was exterior, as to when we got to the inspection by the building department. Did the building department just knock on the door and say, we want to do an inspection? How did that happen?
Absolutely not. I brought the plans and the report to the building department, which is my responsibility, at which point they set a team out along with the Greenwich Fire Department and reviewed the building. And they made the decision that the areas in question had egress paths, and that was their concern.
Okay, so basically their safety concerns weren't for the internal part of the building, it was for the external part of the building. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
To the best of my knowledge, yeah.
I wasn't. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just trying to understand it, because, we've been hearing that the school itself is not safe for kids inside the school. And I'm just trying to understand for myself, because I've never heard the fact that it's just the exterior of the building. I heard for the first time the other day, for example, that you said no repairs have been made to the building, but the scaffolding is in place. So I'm assuming that the scaffolding and the netting in place now makes the building safe for kids to walk by the walls or wherever it is that they have to go to get into school. And that's the reason now the school is open, correct?
That's correct.
sorry. I just noticed that in the breakdown of costs, the construction management pack bid process calls for $50,000. Is that for 1 week or is that for the entirety of the entire process? Okay. And when you say project management, a portion for 5,000, what is that a portion to?
That's our construction project manager as a consultant.
So he's doing other projects is what you're saying, and you're just attributing 5,000. Okay, I'm just not, I'm just trying to understand the, if anybody else has any other questions.
Any other discussion? Yes, Leslie?
I just want to refer to the chart because I think as presented, it's a little confusing. So that I think for our purposes, because we went through the numbers yesterday and certainly our members may understand this. I know that you're submitting this to the RTM. So I'm just making the comment that I don't think the chart should go in this current format to the RTM because it confuses the, yeah. And I do want to recognize too, and the document you gave us doesn't identify that you intend to close out capital appropriations of 671,000 so that, you know, those expenses would not be incurred by the Board of Ed as it's not an offset to this, but it's just related to this request.
Yes, we will close out 671,000 with the appropriate closeout sheets.
Karen?
Just so we also understand, this is an interim appropriation. So this does not, when we put this into operating, this does not increase the base operating costs for the school. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Roland or Pete?
Yes.
Any other discussion? Questions? Okay. Agenda, we showed a appropriation of 940,000. Because the meeting was yesterday, we couldn't post within 24 hours. So I believe in addition to the motion, we're going to have a motion for an amendment.
So I would move that the item on the agenda be amended in its dollar amount to be $1,611,000.
We have a second?
Can I just ask a point of order? I thought in special meetings, you're not allowed to change the agenda.
You're not allowed to consider items which are not on the agenda. You're allowed to make amendments to the agenda. The amendment requires a 2/3.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion by Jeff, seconded by Steve. Discussion on the amendment? Okay. Nisha, can you call the vote? Thank you.
This is a motion to, well, I guess, approve the amendment of ED8 from 940,000 to 1.61 million. I'll just go around if that's okay. 1,611,000. Yep. I'll just go around the circle. Miriam,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Yes.
Leslie,
Yes.
Leslie Mariani,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
and Stephen.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that passes 11-0. One of our colleagues, Mike Basham, had a last minute conflict, was not able to make this special meeting. So it's 11-0. Thank you. Can I get a motion to, no, we actually already have that out there. So right, to vote, yeah. Any other discussion before voting? Okay. Nisha, can you call the vote on the item?
Okay, so this is a motion to approve ED9, which is an additional appropriation for 150,000 for Central Middle School.
we're approving ED8 as amended.
Motion to approve ED8 as amended. I'll go around again. Miriam? Yes. Laura? Yes. Karen?
Yes.
David? Yes. Dan?
Yes.
Leslie Templeton?
Yes.
Leslie Moriarty?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And Stephen?
Yes.
Thank you. And that passes 11-0.
What's your vote, Nisha?
And I'm a yes myself. It's
Okay.
11-0.
That item ED8 passes 11-0 as amended. Thank you. So the next item is ED9, and can we get a report and a motion from our budget chair?
Yes, this is ED8, again, from ED9, I'm sorry. ED9, from the Board of Education, $150,000 for an additional appropriation for Central Middle School for education specifications and environmental analysis. So Mr. O'Keefe explained that an additional appropriation of $150,000 was being requested for the preparation of education specifications and environmental analysis to confirm that the potential location could accommodate the weight of a new building. And the environmental, obviously, phase one at minimum. The committee asked whether the Ed Specs Committee could include a representation of members similar to a feasibility or building committee. Mr. Geiger was requested to set up a major account with sub-accounts to separate funds for education specifications of $15,000 and for environmental analysis of $135,000. Unused funds would be available for future building committee use. A motion was made to approve the additional appropriation of $150,000 and separated into two sub-accounts. The committee voted 4-0-0 and that motion carried.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Okay. Discussion? Laura Erickson?
I just wanted to clarify during our discussion at the Budget Committee yesterday, although we decided to put it in sub-accounts, the Board of Ed has flexibility to move. So if it's 18,000 for Ed Specs, for example, they have that flexibility. It's more for record keeping.
That is correct.
Karen?
The 135, I think, presumes that we already know where the building is going to be located. Is that correct?
That was not explained. I think, Mr. Weston.
No, we don't know.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, where will you be doing your soil testing and environmental testing if you don't know where the building is going to be located?
We'll have to look at the entire field. We've done a preliminary review and we were looking at turfing the grass area. So we have a pretty good indication of where we should look, pretty broad area.
So I guess my original question is, I think you have an idea of where the building is going to be situated. It'll be situated in the field or on the current location?
I have no
or-
idea.
Okay, and how will that be determined, or who will be determining that?
I would say the building committee.
So I guess my question is it premature to be doing all this testing if we don't know where it's going to be sited? Wouldn't it be wiser to wait for the building committee to do whatever their work is with the ed specs and then have the testing done then?
I think the key word there is wait. We were trying to expedite things and that's why we were moving things forward. I don't think it's a waste, period. I think if we go out there and put a shovel in the ground and we find that we have some serious contamination, I think have a much broader reason to meet. If we go out and we find nothing, or we find good soils, which we have in the preliminary from the field, I think it's a good idea to move forward.
Okay, I think it's kind of a chicken and the egg argument, but because I'm hearing we don't know where we want to situate it, but we're going to do testing to see if the soil is good. I'm just not clear as to what we're doing or how this is going to expedite. If we find that the soil is good, but the building committee decides to put it somewhere else, are we spending money that we don't need to spend?
I don't think any of this is being done in the dark. As soon as the building committee, which we hope the building committee is put together in a relatively quick scale, they can work hand in hand with whoever is going to be doing the soils. So yes, it's chicken and the egg, but you know, you can make egg sandwiches if we come out on top.
Any other discussion?
You know, can I just ask the question through you? Could we separate out the approvals to the ed spec and to the environmental analysis? Because I don't have a problem with the ed specs, but the environmental analysis without knowing where the building is going to be, to me, sounds like we're spending money just to get an idea. And I don't know whether it's possible to approve them separately and then, you know,
So you're suggesting that instead of having an account with two sub-accounts, to have two separate?
well,
Is that-
no, I'm saying, can we take a vote first on the 15,000 and then a vote on the 135? Yeah, it's a motion to amend, yes.
But although there would be two votes, they would,
It would
the
still be the
150 would still
150.
go into the,
If the majority says yes,
Okay.
then it would still be the 150.
I'm happy to second that for discussion.
I do think that the need to do the work on the soil is an essential prerequisite. I think any delay in doing the work on the soil would delay the project. The voice of the community is very clear. The voice of all the people at this table that I've heard is very clear that we really want to expedite and not delay. So I would, express a view opposed to the amendment being suggested.
Well, can I just defend my motion
Yes.
here? I'm not suggesting that, again, if the majority votes for the 135, the 135 will be in the budget. I'm suggesting that we just separate out the two for two separate votes so that we get a clear understanding. I'm all for the ed specs. I'm all for this being expedited. I'm all for Central. I've been calling for Central to be placed ahead, for over a year now, and beyond that. But I'm a little uncomfortable voting 150,000 when we don't know where the building is. I'd be more than happy to vote for the ed specs. If I'm the only one voting against the 135, I'm the only one voting against the 135, it still would carry. But I just would like the opportunity to be able to vote for the ed specs without necessarily having to vote for the environmental analysis.
Any other discussion? Yeah, Leslie?
I don't know if this is going to give you any more confidence that that money wouldn't be unwisely spent. But when you talk about how you determine where a building is sited, there are certainly many factors that go into that decision. And yes, the building committee is the entity that will be responsible for the execution of the ed specs. The ed specs will talk about what size and what other attributes the site needs as far as traffic flow and fields and other amenities. When the committee hiring the architect, who then also hires, again, these geotechnical companies to come in to help identify the characteristics of the site, as people have said around the table, as chicken and egg. You need to know what your options are in some sense of where you can put a building, what certain parts of the soil, if it doesn't prove to be able to support a building, you're not going to site it there. There is the other issue that the building committee does consider is whether you build on the existing footprint, which means relocating 500, 600 students and a program to another location while you're building on that site versus building a separate entity that has certainly logistical implications to running the school, but it also has cost implications, positive and negative, right? If you say it's cheaper building on existing footprint, on the other hand, the extra costs of the relocation of the students, they'll look through those alternatives, but they need some of that information. So what we've heard from the Board of Education is they just want to get a little bit of a head start to identify some of those variables as they go to citing, to figuring out how to solve the problem of where to put the building and what to build. And so, will this money get wasted? I think that they're not sitting here telling us they're spending necessarily every dollar of that. It's probably an iterative process. You do some testing and then in the logical areas, and then figure out if you need more. There's some contingency in there. So I would encourage you that it's not wasted money, that it's a process, that the Board of Ed is preparing information that the building committee is absolutely going to need to know, and it helps move the project forward.
Okay, I'll just make one comment here, just to clarify my understanding. Right now, the motion before us is to split it into two for a vote. Okay, and the money would go to the same account, and ultimately the Board of Ed would have the same flexibility they originally considered. So the question here is, do we do it in two separate votes? So I think although that relates to the merits of both votes, all we're voting, this current motion would be to split into two. And then we would then take up the 15 and the 135 separately. But I think
Is this an amendment that requires a 2/3 vote?
No.
Okay.
any more discussion?
Can I speak at your meeting? First of all, just because I never had a chance to say thank you for all of you coming together today. I know this is a big deal to get 11 of the 12 of you on Tuesday morning out of nowhere. So greatly appreciated. And just a little bit, it's funny, when you told me that you thought you could do an ed spec for $15,000, my reaction was, how? Because I don't know about our ed specs in the past have been significantly more than that. So I'm already impressed that we got the number to that. As a result, I would love to have a little bit of flexibility in case, as I predict, it's going to be a little bit more than 15,000. But also, anything that we don't spend on environmental testing will certainly be returned, of course. So I just wanted to note that, but I think you understood that. Thank you.
Just one clarification on that. Would the money be returned, or would it be moved over to the building committee, just so everyone understands?
You would return it. It wouldn't go to the building committee? This is now a capital account into, well, let's talk to Roland about this, because this.
And the money would be available to be spent further on something which fell into the same description and category.
So Roland, do you have a comment on that? Laura?
The way I look at this is, the Board of Ed originally had 250,000 in its fiscal 23 budget for feasibility, to be followed by A&E money, which is our normal process, and then construction at a future date. What we're talking about is moving up essentially that feasibility study and doing it for $100,000 less. So the outcome of the feasibility study is generally ed specs and a general idea of where the building may be located. We may not know exactly, but we do have a recommendation from the architects who did the master plan that Central Middle School is probably the only building in the district that's not likely to be renovated. It really is a replacement job. That's the most cost-efficient way to do this. So I think, the way I look at this is it's a package deal. And I look at the commingling, if you will, of the 150 as a feasibility study. And, for what it's worth, I would say whatever money is left over, which is not apt to be a lot, should stay with the building committee.
Karen?
Look, I mean, all I'm asking is that we separate it out so we have two different votes. The outcome will probably be the same, and you'll still get the 150. I just want to be able to express my concerns without having to vote against the entire package. And that's the only thing I'm asking for. I understand that normally a feasibility study would be done. This would be basically a quasi feasibility study because I don't think it will be a full-blown feasibility study. But, again, you're going to have a building committee with an architect who will be doing additional work. Does it make sense for them to do the entire package, or does it make sense to have this? I don't know the answer to it, but I just want to have the ability to vote for the ed specs and then to vote. I'm just not in favor of the 135 at this point. And that's all I'm asking for. I will probably be the only person voting against the 135, but that's all I'm asking for.
Okay. Yes, Nisha?
So I just want to, just based on some of the discussions that we had yesterday, one, I don't think that this 150 is a portion of a feasibility study. I think we heard very loud and clear at the Board of Ed meeting that, feasibility studies in some sense have been very duplicative in nature historically as well. So I don't think this is necessarily a fair statement to say we're doing a feasibility study for less. I hear Karen absolutely on her point. Although I have similar concerns on the environmental testing, it's for different reasons. I think if we really truly want to build this building faster and we are working for our community, the most productive and fastest way to build this building is again to leverage the same building envelope. And that's again something most folks that are in this sector will agree to. That's not to say we should not consider other options, and we should or cannot. But environmental testing in the back today, I believe, is actually not the best use, or not. And I actually think it's not a monetary. From my perspective, it's not a monetary decision, which is why I voted the way I did. I think the reason we don't want to do environmental testing in the back is it might open up a can of worms that could potentially delay this project beyond what we might think. That being said, I think the reason I approved this the way, and I was part of the approval discussion yesterday, is we do need to give the Board of Ed flexibility in case they need additional resources to do the ed specs. I mentioned yesterday, the true bottleneck in this project is actually our grant application and the process of waiting a year and a half as we wait on the state for approvals. I did suggest some ideas on how to expedite that. So if we're here really discussing the ability to expedite this process, again, my I would say strong opinion here would be to focus our attention on that and not whether we should be doing environmental testing. I would actually prefer we not do any environmental testing, not because of that I'm against environmental testing, but because I think it might significantly delay our process. But again, I just want to make the point. The reason I am supportive of this is I want to give the Board of Ed the flexibility to utilize these sources if the ed spec cost should increase, or if we need additional resources to get the grant process going a little bit faster.
Thank you, Nisha. Are we, okay, Stephen?
I just want to respond to one thing Nisha raised, and the question is directed to the Board of, the question is directed to the Board of Ed. Aren't you required to do the environmental testing in connection with this? With the feasibility study? Wouldn't that be required as a necessary step?
I understand. I know we did it for New Lebanon. I know we did it for New Lebanon, so.
And it's not required for the grant application. I'm sure of that, yeah.
Any more discussion? Are we ready to take a vote? And again, this vote is not on the merits of the 15 or the 135 or the 150. This vote is only on whether or not we separate the vote for the 15 and the 135, understanding that all that money will go to the same account and the Board of Ed will have the same flexibility. So that is this vote. Nisha, can you call the vote?
Miriam?
No.
Laura?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
David?
No.
Dan?
I'll wait.
Leslie? Tuckerton? Leslie Moriarty?
No.
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 I'm a no. Dan? I'm sorry, Leslie Moriarty?
I voted no.
Sorry, Leslie Tuckerton.
So, no, yay or nay?
Abstain.
I will vote yes.
Thank you.
There's two yeses, one. Yes, that's right.
Sorry, you said no, and then you said yes. Probably another question.
I'm sorry, so it's 281 was what I counted. And is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So the vote fails.
Okay, so I think the next vote would be on the motion, on the unamended item.
All right, so this is the motion. We're going to vote on ED9 now, as is. Yeah.
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Karen,
Abstain.
David,
Yes.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
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 So it passes 10-0. 10-0-1.
I just would like the minutes to reflect that my abstention is not against the project. It's not against the ed specs. It's against, it basically calls into question the 135 and the timing of it.
Thank you. I want to thank the BET and all our supporting staff for, making it to two special meetings at the last minute. I also do want to just make a couple of other comments. Yesterday at the Budget Committee, in addition to discussing these two interims, there was significant discussion to kind of see what the big picture is in terms of Central Middle School going forward. So I think it's important that the public understands that the Board of Ed did indicate that, or they did change their fiscal 23 request, which will not come up at a regular BET meeting or special meeting. It will come up through the regular fiscal 23 budget process. Our understanding is that they are going to eliminate the 250,000 for the feasibility, as Laura Erickson mentioned. They are going to be requesting $2.5 million for A&E. That would be in fiscal year 23. And aligned with that, because they're doing the 5-year repair program at Central Middle School, they will be reducing their masonry request, which was $2,971,000 by $2.5 million. So again, I think it's important that people understand that. There was also a lot of discussion at the Budget Committee about, how accelerated this process really is. This is not the standard Greenwich process. We would typically have a full feasibility before the building committee. I think all the boards here were working together to try to get this project done as quickly as possible. So we kind of have a different process here. The other things that will have to happen, obviously, would be a building committee has to be created. And so everyone knows a building committee will have one from the BET, one from the Board of Ed, and then the first selectman. The Board of Selectmen will pick between 5 and 7 other members. So that's a process that's being focused on. And from a timing, the last RTM meeting is June until the summer recess. So I would think that would have to keep this project on schedule, that would have to happen by June. That's of course with the first, the selectman, the first selectman, not with, the BET or the Board of Ed directly. I'll also make one last, comment. Certainly I'm personally, and I think this board is very excited to see, Central, made the first #1 priority. As a reminder, a year ago, this was a 2034 project. And right now we're potentially looking at it being appropriated in 2024, which is, I think, really great news for all concerned. So I want to thank everybody for their work and efforts. Thank you. The motion, I have a motion to adjourn. We adjourn at 9:46. Thank you.